So this question does not have a line reference, and it feels very much like a summary, where we'd be like, oh, I need to kind of take into account the whole passage and re-skim everything and try to get a sense of what the whole passage is about. But no, that's not how the SAT works. Remember, the SAT almost always puts those big picture whole passage questions at the beginning of the set of questions. So if we're at the end, the rules say that this is probably about specific lines. It's a no line reference question, and we just don't know what the lines are because they didn't tell them to us. But there are probably specific lines that are going to help us here. And how would we find them? Well, we know that the chronology rule applies most of the time, meaning that the questions are generally in the order in which the answers appear in the passage. So we saw earlier that the rule does get broken, and this passage has a weird situation where the chronology kind of resets halfway through the questions. But now it's kind of back into a rhythm, right? We had for the question number 8, line 44, question number 9, lines 57 to 58. So we would expect that this answer would be after 57 to 58. So trust the chronology rule. Remember, we trust the rule, even though they do make exceptions, we trust it most of the time, and then we just deal with a few exceptions. So here, I would be reading the end of the passage, and luckily, too, this is where they talk about Dickens. So there's a lot of things pointing towards these lines. So what do we want to do? We want to know the relationship between St. Pierre and Dickens. I was aware that St. Pierre knew a few authors who frequented his establishment, and judging by the care with which he handled the volume, I thought perhaps this Mr. Dickens was one of them. A friend of yours, a lifelong friend, and from now on, he's your friend too. That afternoon, I took my new friend home, hidden under my clothes so that my father wouldn't see it. It was a rainy winter with days as gray as lead, and I read Great Expectations about 9 times, partly because I had no other book at hand, partly because I did not think there could be a better one in the whole world, and I was beginning to suspect that Mr. Dickens had written it just for me. Soon I was convinced that I didn't want to do anything else in life but learn to do what Mr. Dickens had done. Cool. Now, a lot of this is about the narrator and Dickens, right? So we want to know St. Pierre. Let's make sure we're talking about the right person. That happened more here. So what's the relationship? St. Pierre models his own writing after Dickens' style. Well, we don't learn anything about St. Pierre's writing, so that doesn't work. Just not mentioned. St. Pierre is an avid admirer of Dickens' work. Well, probably. I mean, avid admirer sounds pretty strong to me, but he's saying it's a lifelong friend. That's pretty positive. This is pretty positive. I would at least keep it in. Let's see. St. Pierre feels a personal connection to details of Dickens' biography. Well, that may be true, but we don't have evidence of that. He never talks about Dickens' history, so I don't have any evidence of that part. Whereas B is a little bit more provable because he's handing the narrator a book by Dickens and saying it's really good, and he's a lifelong friend. So the book is the work. That seems more provable. D. St. Pierre considers himself to be Dickens' most appreciative reader. Well, we know that strong words are not good on the SAT. The most appreciative reader? Really? Of all the people in the world who have read Dickens, St. Pierre thinks that he is the one who appreciates him the most? Again, maybe, but we don't have evidence of that. That is something that needs to be proven. Just saying that he's an admirer is much weaker and much better than saying he is the best admirer. So there's a good example right there, very clear as day, between choice B and choice D, where we have a decision to make between a choice that is kind of weak and general, choice B, and a choice that is way too specific. And we want to avoid those specific, strong choices and pick things that are weaker, but are still provable by the lines. So yeah, the chronology rule helps us find these lines, and then strong words helps us find the answer.